Welcome to another edition of the Batchelor News Radio Show on the Batchelor News Radio Network. We thank you for joining us as always. We appreciate you on this website. Don't forget, if you are listening live on StreamYard or on YouTube, you can go back and watch on YouTube and watch this broadcast, this bad boy, on the YouTube network. And we certainly invite you to subscribe to our site. We really appreciate you. The more the merrier. So definitely hit us up at Pad Nation One on YouTube or LA Batchelor at YouTube, and you can catch us there. Want to bring in my guest. Always good to have him on. He's a police chief and many in Minnesota. Always good to have him on. Truth and talk and justice. Um, Forgot. I know he ain't a Cowboy fan like his partner, because you know I'm a Steeler fan, and hey, Keith Humphrey said he a Cowboy fan. I love him, but we had to kick him to the curb with football season.
Hey man, he's from the Dallas Fort Worth area, so
Right, right, right,
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Well, Steelers all the way, Chief. Always good. Good to have you on, though, Chief. Um, when you look at everything that's been going on, um, Chief Green, we just had a announcement at the uh, at the point of this particular time, a little earlier, with the former president, with all of that going on and the documents and everything, and people being concerned about it might be law and order and all that. That didn't happen, so we can move past that. Um,
Mhm.
and you and I had some conversations, but even as the midst of we had conversations, there were some questions that came up to me. I want to get to your thoughts. Now, so last week or last time we had you on, we were talking about the First and Second Amendment, right?
Correct.
So, what do you do with people who peacefully have their way in terms of policing those First and Second Amendment, in a sense that you're still going to have some form of chaos, but it's not going to be sort of the physicality part of it, but people are going to want to raise their rights of our bounds and rights of a speech of speech of treaty and all of those things. What do you say to those people who have their freedom of speech and their amendment, their Fourth and Amendment rights, at the same time keeping people severity and keeping people separate?
LA, and I think the main thing is for law enforcement, in my opinion, everybody probably has some different opinions about it, but I think one of the main things we always want to make sure is that people, the freedom and the rights that we have, that those rights are pretty well protected, because as we know, people in other countries don't have the same freedom and rights that we do have here in the United States. And so a lot of people feel that the police are the first ones to try to restrict or limit people's First, Second Amendment, Fourth Amendment rights, whatever it may be. Um, and that the main thing for me is the fact that if things are done in a very civil and peaceful way, that we only, our role is to make sure that things don't escalate into what happened in Charlottesville, where you had the groups of two opposing opinions came together, and it you see how violent that turned out to be. Um, but even then, law enforcement was present, but they allowed the demonstrators or the protesters to be peaceful. So I think the one thing that we need to make sure is that we don't violate anybody's rights, but at the same time, when things turn to chaos, that we need to make sure that people's lives are protected. Property can be replaced, but lives cannot be replaced.
But here's the thing too, Chief Virgil Green. Um, if you know you got a hate group or even Antifa or whatever coming through, is it the responsibility as the police chief like you are, um, to say, uh, to advise not to give this, they get some kind of permit or whatever, to advise that, or just go through the process of allowing them to do it and just doing what's your job? In other words, if the mayor says, well, Chief Green, and then you give them, he or she, advice, or do you just go through whatever the permit allows?
Well, I think you have those conversations about, the potential for any kind of civil unrest, and then you also, um, if there's any other intelligence information that talks about, that addresses any other kind of safety concerns. But if an organization or a group has already, got the proper permits or whatever the city requires for that group or organization to re, to obtain to do their protest, then they can. You just need to make sure you have a good safety plan in place that is going to protect everybody. And I think oftentimes we get into, even we have to protect those who we may not really want to protect. I think.
Because I went when I moved to Florida, Chief Green. When I moved to Florida, and this is a true story, and my sister to this day is like, "Bring your butt back home." She says some other stuff, but anyway, when I moved to Florida, a part of Florida, you know, I always like the kind of lay of the land, so I walk around, see what's going on with the community and everything. And I looked to the left across the street, and there were Klansmen putting their clothes on and whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, wow, so this city that I moved to allows them to do that. And you look at what you said, Chief, that there are, that's their right or whatever. But you kind of look at it and then you go, well, wow, like Klansman is across the street from where I'm walking.
Mm-hmm.
So what is law enforcement doing in that, and how does that even take place? Which is why I asked the question is that, do you even make those recommendations based on what could happen? Because when I saw it, I was like, I mean, I ain't never seen, I'm from Connecticut. I ain't never seen nothing, no Klan stuff, anything. So when I saw it, I was like, wow, it's some Klansman stuff.
Yeah.
So do you make those specific recommendations to avoid those type of confrontations, especially when it comes to racism?
Yeah. Well, and you definitely make those recommendations, but will those recommendations be taken serious? Again, people are going to say they have the right, they have the freedom to protest or do whatever they want to do, and so which puts a lot of strain on the resources for any police department. And so, there again, oftentimes uh, police departments find themselves in the middle of situations, and I think a lot of people would assume, well, if you're allowing this to happen, then you you might believe in this group. Well,
Right.
that's not necessarily the case. I think people got to understand it. In government, obviously, we have to uh, let everybody have those freedoms. Now, when you start restricting those freedoms, then you could potentially find yourself facing some other legal action because of the that if this organization went through and got all the proper permits or to approve to have that, and it may be the KKK. Well, you know, I think we have to. I wouldn't like it, but there again, my job would be to make sure that there's law and order, that things go smoothly, and say, hey, y'all need to help and get through doing what you're doing, and move on down the road.
But and I would think tactically you would have that in place and everything. If a group like the Klan come and whatever, talking with Chief Virgil Green here on the Batchelor News Radio Show. So, Chief, just to go back, if you will, one of the things you and I uh, and Chief were talking about
Chief
uh, were the fact that you're black first and you wear the blue.
Mm-hmm.
Some people say the blue wall, but I don't. I know you don't feel that way because we've had conversations. So anyway, but what do you do with those? Just to reiterate for people who understand where you come from, and your understanding and your show, which will promote that you do have some people, right, that want to go, might have been in that group that I saw across the street when I moved to Florida, maybe
Mm-hmm.
not Klan, but have that, say, Trumpism, if you will, right?
Mm-hmm.
And have that so how do you decipher, for those who've never heard you before, how do you decipher through all of that? Because they still gotta, and I know a lot of the agencies don't say serve and protect anymore, and that's another conversation another day. But how do you get through that, Chief, with those who don't agree with your politics? That those believe that, you may believe that, I'm putting it out there that, you may not believe in, say, Trumpism, right, in his
Mm-hmm.
way, but the people underlink of you believed in that. So how do you kind of get around that and still be a police chief and policing the society that you're in?
I think the one thing that me and my co-host Chief Humphrey have always said, that uh, you leave the politics outside of the police department. Um, Politics does not have uh, political politics doesn't have any place in the conversations within any police department. Now we can say that all day, but you're going to find some people who are going to ignore that and kind of go against what you're trying to establish. And so, for me, it is making sure that people have a very clear understanding that we're not going to talk about politics. I'm not going to talk about the politics that I follow, and I don't want to hear the politics that you follow. So, because that can cause a lot of problems. And as we saw with the insurrection, you had a lot of current, retired, and former officers who were there on the grounds of the state capitol, who were engaged with assaulting other police officers. So, uh, you know, people can't say, well, no, there wasn't. There were retired firefighters as well as active and retired police officers. So, again, politics doesn't have a place in the conversation inside of the police department, because we have to be neutral, and we need to make sure that officers understand that.
But Chief, with all due respect, as you know, there was a lot of politics that went on. It was a lot of people that don't look you and I
Yeah.
that went there to do some harm based on that particular person that they wanted to evolve.
Hmm.
So, um, moving forward, being an agency leader as you are, um, have you faced that? Have you addressed that? Have you seen that in that regard?
I think I haven't faced it. I think for me, I've always had a very clear made things very clear up front
Right.
that we're not going to get into uh, that space of having conversations about politics. Outside of work, you do whatever you want to do, but within the walls of the police department, that's not going to happen. And I think that's when we put some things in place when you start talking about, policy and procedures, not restricting people's, uh, rights or their freedoms, but that there are some things going to be put in place to ensure that if they do happen, there's going to be some other internal things that we'll have to deal with.
Yeah. I'm going to come back to that before you go. Talking with Chief Virgil, Chief Keith Humphrey here on the Batchelor News Radio Show. Chief, I want to go to the good side because here's the thing, Chief. Right, you and I have known each other for a few years now,
Yes.
and um, the reason why I have you and Chief Green on is because you guys will man up on stuff. When it's bad, it's bad. When it's good, it's good. So you will man up on it, and I get that. Um, so here's my good side, right? So there are people out there that you and I had just talked about last time about the First and Second Amendment rights, right?
Correct.
So there are groups out there that I I agree with the First Amendment, right? You have a first to speech and all those things, but some of them are antagonizers,
Oh
right?
yeah.
So so how do you decipher those people? Those two, because I listen to all of them, I watch them all. There's some really good ones that do a really good job, and then there's the saying MFs and everything else. MFs, you know what I'm saying.
Oh yeah.
So so how do you train your folks to deal with that? Because you got to have a thick skin, Cheese. You know that. I can call you something right now, and you got to be able to take it and run with it because constitutionally you're supposed to deal with it, right?
Yeah.
So, so how do you train, or do you train your folks to deal with? Oh, he's nothing but a MF and whatever, and you spit that and whatever. How do you teach them to deal with that and keep it moving and allowing or disallowing, if you will, those who find themselves in their First Amendment rights?
Yeah. Well, it's a good question, La. And the one thing that I have found to be very um, useful are that where you don't engage with these individuals because, as we talked about before, they're trying to get you know more people to view their YouTube channels or where they can make some money off of it, and so the least that you have to engage with these individuals, uh, they're going to move on to the next person. And so one of the things I've told officers is that if you run across these people who are saying that they're First Amendment auditors, and you get into um, a confrontation with them about they can't film or they can't record or they can't do this, they can't do that, and they know that they're in a public space, and there are things that they can do in a public space, even on a sidewalk or out in front of a police department. And so the one thing that I've always said, you know, don't even engage them. I mean, engage, and once you find out, hey, this is somebody who has an agenda, clearly simply walk away, because their only main goal is to get you uh, to get you to do something that's eventually is going to, where they can kind of come back and sue the police department and sue you because they're saying, oh, you violated my rights. And
And
so,
I don't get that. I don't understand why officers and agencies, chief, don't get that. You know, they already got a
oh
reputation
yeah,
to come to Oklahoma, wherever they're coming.
yeah,
You already know it's come. Why would you dig into and allow yourself to, unless it's something blatantly obvious, like you violation of. But why would you even? I watch it and I'm thinking, well, why would you even engage these people? You know what they're doing.
yeah,
They already been there before. Why
yeah,
would you engage them? I
yeah,
don't get it.
yeah. You know, and I dealt with this, dealt with several of them when I was in Oklahoma City, and you know, actually one of them, I recognized who he was, and immediately I went to his YouTube channel, and I said, "Hey, is this you?" And he was like, "Yeah." I said, "Well, hey, you know what, man? You have a nice day." He was like, "No, hold up a second, hold up a second." No, I said, "No, man, you have a nice day." I said, "Hey, you know what?" I said, "You know, it's pretty hot outside. Here's a bottle of water. Anything to deflect." And this guy stood there and looked at me kind of like, you know, I see I'm not going to get to you. So basically, I said, hey, what if you want to take pictures? Take all the pictures you want. I
Right.
said, but understand that there is an area that you know that you cannot cross, and if you do cross that area, then you know you can be subject to be arrested. And I said, so you know what you can do, you know what you can't do. I'm not going to sit up here and argue with you about it. I said because I don't have the time, and I think that's the one thing that really kind of irritates them is the fact that they can't get under your skin. And I've told police officers, don't let these guys get under your skin, and don't let this control that you feel that you have to have over overcompensate uh, the situation that's going on. Let these people do what they're going to do and move on, because the last thing you want to see yourself is on a YouTube video, and it's out there and it'll never be removed.
Chief, I want to real quick ask you, because I think, or maybe you can tell me I'm different. Uh, Growing up in Connecticut and you where you're from, um, it almost seems like it's a difference that the let me ask you, sorry about that. It just seems as though that people who antagonize the law enforcement, um, as opposed to people of color, that it seems to be different. Um, that um, those of us who know what's going on, what time it is, we do what we do, and those who are not of color seem to go through a little bit of different. I wanted you to kind of address that if you may.
Well, you know, Ellen, I think the thing, you know, obviously, you know, how race plays into this here, where you've got people who feel like, you know, yeah, they're going to push your buttons a little bit. But again, I think the main thing is this: uh, these individuals, they're kind of experts at this, and so how do we um, kind of distance ourselves from them, and at the same time, uh, don't become some next TikTok or YouTube viral video. But in there again, you have some people who they know you can only do certain things and you can only say certain things, and so you just don't want to get caught up. Um, you just don't want to get caught up in that situation with them because uh, clearly they have an agenda.
Yeah. Final question for you, Chief, and I appreciate your time. We'll promote your show after that. Is de-escalation,
Hmm.
because I think that um, if and I think fairness to you, Chief, that a lot of people have looked at de-escalation and from a black and white standpoint, whether it be police or non-police standpoint, that a lot of people have looked at it in a different way. So is there, or should I say, a de-escalation way for um, people who are civilians, right? That are persons of color as opposed not to persons. I mean, because you're going to do what you do according to your policy, but for people who have to go through this, non, white people, is there a big difference in how do they do that in order to keep their safety?
Say that again, LA. I'm sorry.
No, no worries. What I was saying is that, um, in terms of de-escalation,
Hmm.
is there a different policy or way of my wife um, when it comes to de-escalation for people of color as opposed to people who might be white? Is there recommendations that you can make? You, who I respect, may be able to give that advice to people of color.
LA, and I think when you talk about de-escalation, obviously the we've seen situations where officers have escalated the situation and not de-escalated the situation, especially when a person of color has felt that their rights have been are being violated or have been violated, and so and I've always said, uh, there are a lot of things that um, you're not going to you even though you want to get your point across um, on a traffic stop, or you want to get your point across wherever you may have encountered a police officer. Uh, Oftentimes, that's not the best place to do it. If you're going to get a citation, go in front of a judge and let the judge figure it out and let the judge dismiss it. Because oftentimes, you even have officers, you have citizen people of color who look just like me and you, who really try to de-escalate a situation, and you have officers who want to escalate the situation, and
Right.
so it's that's a very unbalanced situation, especially if you are trying to de-escalate a situation and you got an officer who is doing everything he or she can to escalate it. And so, again, I think this isn't a time for me to even say just do what that officer says. But again, you have rights. We have rights, and officers should not violate those rights. And so that's where um, things come into play where officers can be held accountable for their actions. So uh, again, I think always try to de-escalate a situation, but if it's not working, then you know, we have to do what we have to do to make sure that our rights are not violated.
Yeah, and I would ask real quick too, Chief, that moving forward in in Minnesota, you haven't had any extreme escalation in terms of with Floyd and everything else. It really hasn't been.
Well, now, I've only been here for, a couple of months. All, the things that happened with George Floyd
Yes,
happened
sir.
way before, I got here.
Yes, sir.
We had situation with George Floyd and then Dante Wright and then Tamir, another incident in
You're
Minneapolis.
right. Mhm.
So yeah, I think now is just the after, uh, the aftermath of what those things have caused harm in the communities in the Minneapolis Twin City area.
Chief, you have always been true blue and straight up.
I'm
You,
always be that way, man.
yeah, man, you do your thing, and I can ask you questions. You can always answer, and that's why we love you, man. We appreciate you, and we respect you, and we really comfort you, man, and really do keep doing what you're doing, man.
Well,
Keep doing what you're doing.
yeah, LA, I've always said you got to be true to who you are. You got to be true to you can't just be true to the uniform. You got to be true to the person that you are. And I said, I'm a black man who puts on a uniform. Uh, when I take off the uniform, I'm still a black man, and I'm just gonna keep it real, keep it honest. And I think we need a lot more leaders in positions to just be honest with people and keep it real and not try to wiggle our way out of a situation or wiggle our way out of just being straightforward about calling it out what it is.
Right.
That's the way it is. That's just the way it is.
That's the way it is.
Yeah.
I mean, and I appreciate that and love on and respect that, man. And I appreciate you. Um, Before you go, let people know when they can watch your show live, man, for real.
Yeah, I appreciate that, LA.
Yes, sir.
Our show, we started out with you on the Batchelor News Radio Network, and our podcast show is called You and the Law Podcast Show, and we air live every Thursday afternoon at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, obviously 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But we have these up. These conversations dealing with policing in America and how we need to look at changing the culture of policing. So we as you know, we talk about things that are not off limit. We talk about the good and the bad, but I think we probably talk a little bit more about the bad because we're in this to change the conversations surrounding policing. And so people can follow us on our on our Facebook page, You and the Law Facebook page. They can follow us on all the streaming platforms, Spotify and Apple Podcasts and everything else. And you can go back and listen to some great shows, um, even all the way back to when we were on the Batchelor News Radio Network. So it's been good, and it's good to know that the voices that we have as two black executive in policing, people want to hear what we have to say and the ideas that we have to change how our communities are being policed.
Well,
And I'll say this, Ellen, not just by white officers. This also goes for black officers because we got a lot of black officers who don't respect and value the black lives as the way that they should. So we just don't talk about the negative white cops. We talk about the negative black cops as to what happened up in Memphis with Tariq Nichols.
well, big ups to Chief Humphrey. And what I was going to say was that, to your point, is that you don't just concentrate on the bad white officers. You concentrate on the black officers to allow these things to happen. So
Exactly.
you touched on where I was going to go, um, and I'm just looking on the email now, man. And like I said, I'm gonna hit you up, and we'll figure something out, man. Because we really need. This is just like I don't. What I don't, Chief, I don't, and I'll let you guys know. What I don't. Okay, so I ran the right, and then the guy said I ran the right. So he debating. So then he gets with his supervisor, and then they go, well, he ain't really run the river. And then they go, oh, everything's fine. Have a nice day. No, that's not right. You told me I ran the right rate. So if I ran it wrong,
Yeah.
then you'll give me a ticket or tell me I was wrong. I don't like the fact that you just go away. That's not right.
Yeah.
That you and I and Chief need to have. Don't tell me I did wrong if I did wrong. If I did wrong, tell me what I did wrong and tell me why. Don't just walk away
Mm-hmm.
and don't do anything.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
tells me nothing. That
Yeah.
tells me nothing.
Exactly. Yeah. You're right. You're right. Yeah. And again, I think that's where people lose respect for you. So when you have those conversations, people uh, will respect you a lot more. So yeah.
Yeah. So we need to have that conversation because that's the kind of stuff that irritates a lot of people, Chief. That they get under their skin. It's like, okay, I didn't do anything wrong, but now okay, nothing's wrong. Like, have a good day.
Yeah.
No, it don't work like that.
Yeah.
You just caused my dre, and now you want to say nothing happened.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to talk about that, Chief. I appreciate you, sir.
Oh,
God bless.
anytime,
Thank you.
sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
All right.
All right, man.
All right. Have a good one, bro.
Yes, sir. Always good to have Chief Virgil Green or Chief on to talk about this. If you miss any part of our broadcast, make sure you go to our website, The Batchelor News, The Batchelor, BATCHELOR news.airtime.pro.